Epic is a movie based on a children's book called The Leaf Men and the Brave Good Bugs. Mary Catherine, MK for short, visits her father. He's a scientist who believes that there is an advanced race of tiny people living in the forests near his house. Not long after that, a series of magic-induced events shrink MK down to size, and she is put in charge of guarding a pod that will blossom into the queen of the forest, protecting it from evil forces with the power to rot. That sounded a little less silly in my head. The Good. This movie did a good job at not being another Ferngully or Avatar. Are there similarities? Oh Lord, yes. The big difference is that it doesn't feel like just another contrived tale that ultimately says, man bad, trees good. It's essentially the never-ending war of two forces of nature, ones that take care of nature and ones that destroy it, and throughout this entire fight it keeps nature in balance. Throughout this movie, very little was mentioned about the evils of man. Anyway, in this movie, we see the perspective of the world from another viewpoint, the viewpoint of someone who is much smaller than your typical human, and thus, the environments are much grander and much prettier to look at. This is something I never really get tired of seeing in movies, especially when animated movies make it look so good. They show you all this grand, breathtaking, beautiful stuff, and then you realize that when you're this small, mice aren't exactly cute anymore. There's a dimensional difference introduced in this movie. Admittedly, this is probably going to fly over the heads of its target audience. But it basically says smaller creatures move faster than larger creatures and operate on a different level of time. So, from the perspective of smaller creatures, much bigger creatures like humans move incredibly slow.
I'm moving so fast the whole world's going in slow motion, baby.
What? The characters in this movie had decent charm and chemistry, which made for good on-screen interaction between them. This movie emphasizes a lot about connections. I won't elaborate on it, but it was pretty cool the way they worked it into the writing of the screenplay, and I thought that even though it was a little cheesy, I also found it a little clever. The Iffy. I saw this in 3D, which I never count for how good or bad a movie is. As it usually is with animated movies, the 3D was pretty good on this one. I would say the movie's title is wrong. I think calling it epic raises too many expectations for the audience, so if they get anything less than something that is absolutely epic and mind-blowing, then they walk out of the theater thinking they're disappointed because they were expecting something much bigger than what they got. It didn't bother me that much, but something tells me that they didn't want to be mistaken for something like Ferngully by calling it Adventures of the Leaf Men or some other crap like that. So maybe they called it that on purpose just to get some more seats in the theater. I thought getting celebrities like Beyonce, Pitbull, and Steven Tyler to be in this movie was a little odd, but I think Beyonce and Pitbull did a pretty good job for what they were given. What about Steven Tyler? I'll get to Steven Tyler. The Bad. Steven Tyler's character, who is a keeper of knowledge guru of sorts, is not very good. Say what you will about the comedic relief slugs, but Steven Tyler's character was written purely on the fact that it was a celebrity cameo meant to milk his unique personality, and it was awful. I also put a forgettable song in the movie. It was brief, thank God. I said earlier the movie had good writing in some cases. It has poor writing in some other cases. Early trailers of this movie made me believe it wasn't going to give into the gimmicks that a lot of animated movies tend to give into. Like Ferngully, it has the annoying comedic relief characters. Again, see the slugs, although I didn't think they were that bad. But it's also evident in the cheesiness of the writing that I mentioned earlier. In some cases that cheesiness works, and others it kind of distracts you from the clever stuff that they had presented in other various areas of the movie. There are also moments that I feel are supposed to be emotional moments. Unfortunately, the movie doesn't actually let these moments stick. You start to feel a moment where a character is talking to another character or talking to themselves or something. It's a moment that feels like you should just let it happen and it should stick, and it will create an emotional response with the audience and get a feel for the mood of the character to create some sympathy. But then you'll hear a bang, there'll be a problem off there, the character's gotta run off and go solve it, and it never lets that emotional moment stick. This movie also subjects itself to the parent cliché. It's meant to carry weight in the vein that a couple of characters have parents who have passed away, and so they have other parental figures who are supposed to look after them. And with one of these characters, it sorta works, for the other one really doesn't settle in that well. Lastly, and rightly so, the very last joke of the movie is disgusting. I will say no more on that. If you're really that curious, either look it up or go see the movie. As I said, this film being called epic raises unfair expectations. It is not by any means epic, and you should not go into the movie expecting as such. For what it was, rather than what some people might have expected, I thought it was a decent movie. Nothing spectacular, but I would say it's worth a watch. This is Detective Steve saying, you can't release a movie called Epic in the summertime when another movie coming out in the summertime is this.
This is Earth.